In this comparative study, I will be examining the horror genre and its purposeful use of violence through comparing the 2007 remake film Funny Games by Austrian filmmaker Michael Haneke and the 1975 film Salò or the 120 Days of Sodom by Italian director Pier Paolo Pasolini, which I will be shortening down to Salò for the rest of this video. I have chosen these two films as I believe they're both representative of the genre's approach to violence throughout the years, as well as both providing commentaries on violence, but through both different means and to different ends. Salò is often cited as being one of the pioneer films of the sadistic horror genre that birthed the tropes associated with itself, and serves as a satire of the politically fascistic state of Italy during both World War II and of what Pasolini believed was still present in the time period in which it was released. On the other hand, Funny Games is an American remake of Haneke's original Austrian film in 1997 and subverts many tropes of the horror genre to provide a statement on the use of violence in the media and American pop culture. I will be explicitly analysing the film's institutional and geographic context, as well as demonstrating the similarities and differences of each film's social and political context and intent. Salò is a film about 4 fascist libertines who abduct 18 teenage boys and girls and subjugate them to months of physical, psychological and sexual torment for their own amusement. As agreed upon by film critic Mark Kermode, it is based upon the novel The 120 Days of Sodom by Marquis de Sade. On the other hand, Funny Games is about 2 psychopathic youths who break into the homes of a bourgeoisie family and force them to play traumatizing games with one another for their own and the audience's entertainment. It was adapted from Haneke's earlier Austrian film, but this time filmed on a $15 million budget starring popular actors such as Tim Roth, Naomi Watts and Michael Pitt. Upon release, Salò was banned in numerous countries for its graphic portrayal of gore, rape and coprophilia. It was made on an unknown budget starring many of Pasolini's associates at the time, many involved in the Italian independent filmmaking and theatre scene. Funny Games, on the other hand, does not receive nearly as much controversy, though Michael Haneke has cited the film as an influence on his own work. Salò and Funny Games are comparable in the regards that both films are statements born out of the stylistic tendencies of their directors to make statements about socio-political issues, but the films are very different in how they go about executing this, with one film embracing the genre's tropes and the other going out of its way to avoid them. This is mostly evident in each film's mise-en-scène. Funny Games is shot typically with smooth and dynamic cinematography and a coherent sound design akin to typical Hollywood cinema. This is ironically juxtaposed by the film's reluctance to show any violence, and when violence is shown or implied, to not stylize it in the sense that many contemporary horror films at the time would have, demonstrated best by the scene in which Georgie is shot dead in front of his parents.
Idiot, Tubby.
The action is shown off screen, and we only see the aftermath.
One left over. What's wrong with you?
Salò, contrastingly, is shot in a very naturalist manner, with often shaky cinematography and an overdub audio track. This provides an uncomfortably ironic tone when considering the film has relentless amounts of depravity and violence shown, most evident in the film's climax where the libertines are killing off their victims, which also serves as a visual metaphor forcing the audience to watch the depravity as it's shot through a telescopic lens. It is through the film's excessive use of violence that defines the film as being a part of the sadistic horror genre, as its liberal use of shocking visuals became the norm for the genre, and the film is now regarded as influential amongst many extreme filmmakers, such as John Waters, Gaspar Noé, and even Michael Haneke himself. Funny Games chooses to save its most narratively important scene to show the most graphic display of on-screen violence, which is when Peter's death is undone as the film itself is reversed by Paul.
Remote control.
This saving of violence for the film's most important moments is a feature typical of Michael Haneke's filmography, such as Cachet or Benny's Video. Still though, the violence in this scene is literally undone, to further undermine the audience's satisfaction and advance the film's critique of violence in the media as a tool of plot development. The choice to subvert the tropes most commonly associated with the horror genre is emblematic of the film's commentary of violence in the media, inducing a reaction of shock and almost disappointment in the audience that a film like this would normally cater towards.
Okay, that was the test run. Now we're gonna go for the Olympic gold.
Same mentality applies to the depiction of sexuality in both films, with Funny Games refusing to show nudity at all costs, likely to satirise the overuse in American films, and Salò having both full frontal male and female nudity constantly, that eventually desensitisses the audience to it. This is in line with Pasolini's previous films, The Canterbury Tales and Arabian Nights. Whilst thematically the films are similar due to the inherent nature of the sadistic horror genre, their geographic contexts are pivotal to the understanding of their political and social intent. Salò, the place itself, was effectively a Nazi puppet state during the Second World War, and the film was filmed during the Italian neo-realism era, where underfunding of the film industry led to small budgets and on-location filming being a requirement. That naturally lent the films to be critical of the class system and of the socially elite, Salò serving as a very extreme exaggeration of such.
Evidentemente la spinta è venuta dal fatto.
My need to make this film came from the fact that I particularly hate the leaders of today. Each one of us hates with particular vehemence the power to which he is forced to submit. And so I hate the powers of today. It's a power which manipulates people, just as it did at the time of Himmler or Hitler.
Funny Games, on the other hand, was remade in the United States as Michael Haneke wanted the original to serve as a critique of American films, but was not able to shoot in America due to practical reasons at the time. The choice to make the film almost beat for beat, but just in a different country, proves the sentiment to be true, making the satirical element of the film apparent by incorporating his stylistics through a US-centric lens as opposed to European. There are post-production choices, particularly in sound editing, made for satirical effect also displayed in the film's use of soundtrack in the openings of each film, with Salò using a Franco Consaldo neoclassical piece synonymous with the pleasant delights of a ballroom to almost humorously undermine the horrors about to unfold. Funny Games used an abrasive avant-garde jazz and grindcore song called Bonehead by a band called Naked City, led by John Zorn. And the band sounds like a mockery of the extremity of metal music, making it no surprise that Haneke saw fit to have it in the opening of his film that openly mocks the audience. Key difference not in sound but optimization is the fact music is played in Salò diegetically as well as non-diegetically. Whereas Funny Games' use of soundtrack is purely non-diegetic, a choice often attributed to Haneke's commentary on hypermasculinity and extremity in horror, as referenced by film critic Patricia Taxon regarding the use of Bonehead.
Do you think it's enough? I mean, you want a real ending, right? With plausible plot development, don't you?
Though similar in messaging, both films share an inherent contrarian nature to the cinematic landscape they were both released under, but for almost the opposite reasons. The violence and sexual depravity shown in Salò is deemed controversial, hence why the film was banned in several countries. Meanwhile, Funny Games made the choice to be conservative with its use of violence amongst an increasingly liberal genre. Both films, however, make reference to their nature and their expectancy of reception, Salò through its self-referential dialogue,
Tutto è buono quando è eccessivo.
and Funny Games through its characters' insistencies on politeness and fourth wall breaks.
And you're on their side, aren't you? Who are you betting on, hmm?
But wait, what kind of bet is this? If they're dead, they can't live up to their side. And if they win, they can't live either.
Yes, they'll lose either way, that's what I'm saying.
Funny Games and Salò are films that are theoretically aligned with one another thanks to both films existing within the horror genre, with similar approaches to character development, use of soundtrack, and contrarian intent attributed to both films' respective auteurs. However, the films are different in their messaging, as one subverts the tropes of the genre by being conservative in its approach to visuals, whilst presenting itself likely to be indulging with them, to mock the Western perspective of violence in the media. The other embraces the tropes to shock the audience into caring about the struggles of class and elite in fascist as well as post-fascist Italy, all under a naturalist, realist, and oddly nuanced cinematic framework.